In the shadowed halls of Harrogate Manor, a cryptic letter lures Hercule Poirot to a gathering where secrets fester and danger stalks. A priceless sapphire vanishes, a poisoned chalice nearly claims a life, and a cloaked figure weaves a web of blackmail and betrayal. Is it a curse from the manor's past, or a mastermind among the guests? As screams echo and clues lavender scents, indigo silk, coded messages pile up, Poirot's grey cells face their ultimate test. Can he unravel the mystery of a hidden relic before the final act strikes? From a midnight duel to a buried vault, follow Poirot through a labyrinth of deception, where every step could be his last. Chapter 1. The Shadowed Invitation. The fog clung to the Yorkshire moors like a jealous lover, its tendrils curling round the gnarled trees and sinking into the hollows of the earth. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the damp chill, stepped from the creaking carriage onto the gravel path leading to Harrogate Manor. His polished shoes crunched softly, a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant caw of a rook. The air carried the scent of wet peat and something sharper, perhaps the promise of secrets. Poirot adjusted his Homburg hat, his moustache twitching as he surveyed the looming silhouette of the manor, its Gothic spires piercing the mist like the teeth of some ancient beast. The invitation had arrived at his London flat 3 days prior, penned in the elegant, if slightly tremulous, hand of Lady Evelyn Harrow. The letter was brief, almost curt, yet it thrummed with an urgency that piqued Poirot's curiosity. A matter of grave concern, she had written, one that requires your singular intellect, Monsieur Poirot. I fear a shadow moves within these walls. No further details, no overt plea for help, only a date, a time, and the promise of a gathering at her isolated estate. For a man whose little grey cells thrived on puzzles, the vagueness was irresistible as he approached the manor's heavy oak door, studded with iron bolts. Poirot noted the faint glow of lamplight seeping through the leaded windows. The door swung open before he could knock, revealing a butler whose gaunt frame and sallow complexion suggested a life spent in perpetual shadow. "Monsieur Poirot," the man intoned, his voice as dry as old parchment, "Lady Harrow awaits you in the drawing-room." The interior of Harrogate Manor was a study in contrasts, opulent yet decayed, grand yet suffocating. Crimson velvet drapes hung heavy with dust, and the air was thick with the scent of aged wood and beeswax. Poirot's eyes darted to the details. A chipped porcelain vase, a portrait of a stern-faced Harrow ancestor, its eyes seeming to follow him as he was led through a labyrinth of corridors. The butler, who introduced himself as Mr. Grimsby, moved with the silent precision of a spectre, his footsteps muffled by the threadbare runner. The drawing-room was a blaze of warmth compared to the chill of the halls. A fire roared in the massive hearth, casting flickering shadows across a circle of guests, who turned as one to regard Poirot's entrance. Lady Evelyn Harrow, a woman of perhaps 60, rose from a high-backed chair. Her silver hair was swept into a chignon, and her emerald-green gown shimmered in the firelight, though her eyes held a flicker of unease. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice carrying the crisp authority of her station, "you honour us with your presence." Poirot bowed, his gaze sweeping the room. "The honour, madame, is mine. But I confess, your letter has left me most intrigued. A shadow, you say?" Lady Harrow's lips tightened, and she gestured to the others. "Allow me to introduce my guests. They are eclectic, but each has a reason to be here." The first was Miss Clara Vane, a young heiress whose sharp cheekbones and sharper tongue suggested a woman accustomed to command. Her auburn hair was pinned loosely, and her sapphire blue dress was cut daringly low, drawing murmurs from the older guests. She met Poirot's scrutiny with a defiant tilt of her chin. "I've heard of you, monsieur," she said, her voice laced with amusement. "The detective with the moustache that solves crimes. Let's hope you're as clever as they say." Next was Mr. Tobias Finch, a reclusive artist whose dishevelled appearance rumpled linen suit. Ink-stained fingers clashed with the room's grandeur. His eyes, dark and restless, darted to the corners as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "I paint what I see," he muttered, almost to himself, "and sometimes I see too much." The final guest was Dr. Alistair Rook, a historian with a penchant for cryptic remarks. His wiry frame was clad in tweed, and his spectacles gleamed as he leaned forward, studying Poirot like a specimen. "Harrogate Manor has secrets older than its stones," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "I trust you're prepared to unearth them." Poirot smiled, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chase. "Secrets, Monsieur Rook, are my specialty. But first, Madame Harrow, perhaps you might clarify the nature of this shadow." Before Lady Harrow could respond, the room plunged into darkness. The fire dimmed as if smothered, and the lamps flickered out, leaving only the howl of the wind outside. A woman's scream-high, piercing cut through the silence, followed by the crash of glass. Poirot remained still, his senses sharp, counting the seconds until the lights returned. When they did, the guests were in disarray. Clara clutched her necklace, Tobias cowered by the hearth, and Rook stood rigid, his spectacles askew. Lady Harrow, pale but composed, pointed to a shattered decanter on the floor, its contents pooling like blood. "Someone was here," she whispered. "I felt a presence." Poirot knelt beside the decanter, his gloved fingers tracing the shards. "A presence, madame, or perhaps a message." He inhaled subtly, detecting a faint whiff of lavender not from the room's furnishings, but from the broken glass. His eyes narrowed. This was no accident. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, and Clara's voice broke the tension. "We too believe someone crept in, smashed a decanter, and vanished. This is absurd." Her tone was bold, but her hands trembled. "Absurdity, mademoiselle, often cloaks intent," Poirot replied, rising. "But let us not speculate without order. Tell me, Madame Harrow, who else resides in this manor?" "Only Grimsby and the staff," Lady Harrow said. "The maids, the cook, and a groundskeeper, all have served my family for years, and—" Yet Poirot mused, "a shadow moves where loyalty should reign. Curious, Nan." The evening progressed with strained civility, the guests retreating to their corners as Poirot observed. Tobias sketched feverishly in a notebook, his pencil scratching like a trapped insect. Clara sipped brandy, her eyes flicking to the windows as if expecting an intruder. Rook, meanwhile, pored over a leather-bound tome, muttering about cycles of fate. Lady Harrow excused herself briefly, returning with a forced smile and a tray of tea, which Poirot politely declined. As the clock struck 10, Grimsby announced that the guest rooms were prepared. Poirot followed the butler to his quarters, a modest but elegant chamber overlooking the moors. The bed was canopied in damask, and a single candle burned on the nightstand. As Grimsby departed, Poirot's sharp eyes caught a faint movement, a slip of paper sliding under the door. He retrieved it swiftly, unfolding a single sheet of vellum. The message, written in an angular script, read, "The star falls at midnight. Trust no one." Poirot's pulse quickened. not with fear but with the thrill of a puzzle taking shape. The star could only refer to the Star of Harrow, the famed sapphire Lady Harrow was known to possess. But a fall, a theft, a metaphor, and why warn him unless the sender sought his intervention or his misdirection? He tucked the note into his waistcoat, his mind racing, returning to the corridor. Poirot moved silently, his ears attuned to the manor's whispers. A faint creak from the staircase drew his attention, and he glimpsed a shadow. A person, but a distortion, as if the air itself had shifted. He followed, descending to the grand hall, where a massive chandelier gleamed faintly in the moonlight. Beneath it, a single lavender petal lay on the polished floor, its fragrance unmistakable. Poirot knelt, his fingers brushing the petal. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "A calling card, perhaps." He straightened, his mind cataloguing the guest's behaviors. Clara's defiance masked fear. Tobias's unease suggested knowledge. Rook's cryptic musings hinted at hidden motives. And Lady Harrow, her composure was too perfect, her invitation too vague. The petal, the note, the scream, all pieces of a mosaic. But the pattern eluded him. Back in his room, Poirot lit the candle and spread the coded message before him. The script was precise, the ink fresh, suggesting it was written within the manner. He traced the letters, his lips moving silently as he tested patterns. A simple cipher, perhaps, but time was short. The clock on the mantel read 11:30. If the star was to fall at midnight, he had mere minutes to act. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Lady Harrow stood at the door, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot, I must speak plainly. The Star of Harrowit is more than a gem. It holds a history, one I fear has drawn danger to us all." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Then, madame, we must ensure this star does not fall. Accompany me to the display room, s'il vous plaît." They moved swiftly, the manor's corridors seeming to close in around them. The display room was a vaulted chamber, its centerpiece a glass case housing the Star of Harrow, a sapphire the size of a quail's egg, its facets catching the lamplight like a trapped galaxy. Poirot examined the case, noting the intricate lock and the absence of tampering. "It is secure," he said, "for now." As midnight chimed, the manor seemed to hold its breath. No theft occurred, no shadow struck. Yet Poirot's unease grew. The note had promised a fall, but perhaps the crime was not so literal. He returned to his room, the candles flamed dancing as he sat at the desk. The coded message stared back at him, a challenge to his intellect. By dawn, Poirot had not slept. The message remained unbroken, but his resolve was firm. The scream, the petal, the note, they were threads in a tapestry of deception, and he would unravel them. For now, he had thwarted the immediate threat, if it existed at all. The manor was quiet, the guests asleep, and the Star of Harrow still gleamed in its case. But Poirot knew this was merely the opening act. The shadow, whatever it was, would move again, end. Poirot leaned back, the candlelight casting his silhouette. Against the wall, the mystery was afoot, and his grey cells hummed with anticipation. He had prevented a crime, more so it seemed, but the true test lay ahead, and he was ready. Chapter 2. The Vanishing Heirlooms. Dawn broke over Harrogate Manor with a reluctant light, the sun struggling through the ever-present Yorkshire fog. Hercule Poirot stood at his window, his eyes tracing the rolling moors as his mind retraced the events of the previous night, the coded message, the lavender petal, the scream. They were not random. They were deliberate, like brushstrokes on a canvas, yet to reveal its full design. His moustache twitched as he adjusted his tie. The crisp, not a small act of defiance against the manor's oppressive air. Breakfast was served in the dining hall. A cavernous room with a long mahogany table and portraits of Harrow ancestors glaring. From the walls, the guests gathered, their faces etched with varying degrees of unease. Lady Evelyn Harrow presided at the table's head. Her composure regained system. Apologies, it seems the response was cut off. I'll continue from where it left off and complete the story for Chapter 2, ensuring it remains engaging, non-repetitive, and aligns with the sophisticated yet suspenseful tone of the previous chapter. The narrative will maintain continuity with Chapter 1, avoiding any repetition of incidents, scenes, or conversations, and will conclude with a satisfying resolution to the chapter's arc, while setting the stage for the next .ys, thematic grace, restored despite the previous night's disturbances. Clara Vane, the heiress, entered with a defiant toss of her auburn hair. Her sapphire blue dress replaced by a tailored riding habit that suggested a morning on the moors. Tobias Finch, the artist, slouched in his chair, his fingers smudged with charcoal as he clutched a steaming cup of tea. Dr. Alistair Rook, the historian, adjusted his spectacles, his gaze darting to Lady Harrow with an intensity that bordered on accusation. Poirot, seated at the table's far end, sipped his coffee, his eyes missing nothing, the slight tremor in Clara's hand, the way Tobias's foot tapped restlessly, the faint crease of worry on Rook's brow. Lady Harrow rose, her emerald gown exchanged for a sombre grey one, her voice steady but strained. Monsieur Poirot, I must share grave news. The star of Harrow is gone. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Clara's cup clattered against its saucer. Gone. How? It was locked in that wretched case last night. Her tone was sharp, but her wide eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Tobias muttered, impossible. I was sketching near the display room until dawn. No one passed. Rook leaned forward, his voice low and measured. The sapphire's history is tangled. Perhaps its absence is no theft, but a reclamation. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. Speculation without evidence is chaos. Mise Amos. Madame Harrow, lead me to the scene, si vous plot. The display room was unchanged from the midnight inspection, save for one glaring absence. The glass case stood intact, its lock unmarred, yet the velvet cushion within was bare. The star of Harrow, that mesmerizing sapphire, was nowhere to be seen. Poirot circled the case, his gloved fingers brushing the glass, his nose catching a faint, familiar scent lavender, sharp and deliberate, just as he'd detected on the shattered decanter. His eyes narrowed, tracing a hairline scratch on the lock's underside, invisible to a casual glance. Curio, he murmured. A lock untouched, yet a gem vanished. This is no ordinary theft. Clara, hovering at the door, scoffed. What, you think it sprouted wings? Someone picked that lock, monsieur, and I'd wager it's one of us. Or none of us, Rook interjected, his fingers drumming the tome. He carried everywhere. The manor's history is riddled with hidden hands. The sapphire was once stolen in 1723, only to reappear under mysterious circumstances. Poirot turned, his moustache twitching. History, Monsieur Rook, is a guide, not a verdict. Let us proceed with method. He knelt, inspecting the floor, and found a single thread silk, dyed a deep indigo cot, in a crack near the case. He pocketed it, his mind cataloguing its significance. Silk was rare here, a clue to an outsider's presence, or perhaps a guest's deception. The morning unfolded in a flurry of interviews, each guest summoned to the library where Poirot sat. Behind a rosewood desk, the coded message from the previous night tucked safely in his waistcoat. Clara Vane was first, her posture rigid, her answers clipped. "I was riding at dawn," she said. "The moors clear the mind. I saw no one, touched nothing." Yet her riding boots, caked with mud, bore a faint lavender scent when Poirot leaned close, ostensibly to adjust a fallen pen. Tobias Finch was next, his hands trembling as he spoke. "I sketched the hall all night. The case was fine when I left. At 4, I swear it." His sketchbook, when Poirot requested a glance, revealed frantic drawings of the manor's spires, but one page torn at the edge depicted a hand holding a gem, its facets eerily like the stars. Imagination. Tobias insisted, but his eyes darted away. Rook entered last, his tweed suit impeccable, his tone maddeningly cryptic. "The sapphire is tied to a covenant, Monsieur Poirot. Its loss may be a ritual, not a crime. When Twait's system, apologies again for the cut-off, continuing seamlessly, crime." He produced a faded letter from his pocket, its wax seal broken, describing a 17th century theft of the sapphire linked to a secret society. Poirot's interest sharpened, but he pressed for specifics. "Ritual or not, monsieur, someone entered this room." "Where were you at dawn?" "Reading in the east wing," Rook said. "The light there is better for study." His fingers brushed his tome, and Poirot noted a faint indigo stain on his cuff silk dye. Perhaps, though Rook's calm demeanour gave little away, Poirot dismissed them. Retreating to the manor's winter garden, a glass house of wilting roses and overgrown vines. There he examined the indigo thread under a magnifying glass, confirming its quality expensive, not local. The lavender scent, the thread, the scratch on the lock, they pointed to a calculated act, not a clumsy burglary. He recalled the coded message, "The star falls at midnight." Yet it was gone by dawn, suggesting the warning was either late or misdirection. His grey cells hummed, piecing together a theory. The theft was staged to provoke chaos, perhaps to expose a deeper secret. Lunch brought no respite. The dining hall buzzed with accusations. Clara pointedly avoided Tobias's gaze, while he fidgeted, sketching absent-mindedly on a napkin. Rook, silent, watched Lady Harrow with an intensity that unsettled Poirot. The meal roast pheasant and claret was interrupted by Grimsby, the butler, his face paler than usual. "Madame wishes to see you in the study," he whispered. Lady Harrow, seated by a roaring fire, clutched a handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot, I fear I've endangered you," explaining his presence, but his explanation faltered. "I was in my chambers," he said quickly. "I heard nothing, saw nothing." His insistence was firm, but his fingers bore faint charcoal smudges, and his eyes flicked nervously to the door. The afternoon was spent combing the manor. Poirot, accompanied by Grimsby, explored the cellars, finding Istam, apologies for another cut-off. Continuing, finding nothing there, he moved to the attic, where dust motes danced in the slanted light. A trap door led to a cramped space, but it was empty save for an old crate, its lid nailed shut. Inside, Poirot found a scrap of indigo silk, caught in a splintered board, matching the thread from the display room. His pulse quickened. This was no coincidence. Dinner was a tense affair. The guests seated stiffly, their conversation stilted. Clara accused Tobias outright, her voice cutting like a blade. "You were sketching near the case. Who else could it be?" Tobias flushed, muttering about his art, not theft. Rook deflected with a lecture on the sapphire's history, while Lady Harrow urged Poirot to act swiftly. As the meal ended, a maid rushed in, breathless. The casets open again, and the sapphires back. Poirot hurried to the display room, finding the case ajar, the star of Harrow gleaming on its cushion. But his trained eye caught a flaw hairline fracture in the gem's largest facet, invisible to the untrained. A fake, expertly crafted, placed to deceive. Poirot's lips curled. "Clever," he murmured, "but not clever enough." He summoned the guests back to the drawing-room, his demeanour calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the star has returned, but it is not the star. A replica, meant to fool us. The true gem is elsewhere, and the game is deeper than we thought." He held up the indigo thread. "This belongs to none in this room, an outsider or a traitor among us." The chapter's arc resolved with the sapphire's return, though its falsity raised new questions. Poirot had thwarted a deception, ensuring the manor's immediate safety. The guests, shaken but relieved, retired for the night, unaware the true star remained at large. Poirot, standing by the hearth, studied the coded message again. Its cipher unbroken, but its warning clear. Someone had orchestrated this to unsettle Harrogate Manor, and they were still out there. End. Poirot retreated to his room, the firelight casting long shadows. The star of Harrow was back, but it was a liar, flawless fake, meant to conceal a greater truth. His grey cells buzzed with the thrill of the chase, satisfied with exposing the ruse, but certain the real crime was yet to come. The manor slept, but Poirot did not, his mind already turning to the next thread in this intricate tapestry. Chapter 3. The whispered confession. The morning mist clung to Harrogate Manor like a shroud, softening the edges of its Gothic spires as Hercule Poirot stood in the winter garden, the indigo thread from the attic cradled in his gloved palm. The fake sapphire, now secured in the display case under his watchful eye, was a taunter move in a game where the rules remained elusive. The coded message, still unbroken, weighed heavily in his waistcoat, its words, "The star falls at mid," like a riddle yet to be solved. The lavender scent, the silk thread, the fractured gem, each was a breadcrumb, leading not to a thief, but to a mind orchestrating chaos. Poirot's moustache twitched as he resolved to tighten the net. Breakfast was a sombre affair in the dining hall, the clink of silverware sharp against the silence. Lady Evelyn Harrow, her grey gown replaced by a deep burgundy one, presided with a brittle smile, her eyes flitting to the windows as if expecting an uninvited guest. Clara Vane, her riding habit swapped for a cream silk blouse, toyed with her toast, her sharp tongue subdued. Tobias Finch, the artist, sat hunched, his charcoal-stained fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. Dr. Alistair Rook, ever the historian, sipped his tea, his spectacles glinting as he watched the others with a predator's patience. Poirot, seated opposite, noted the tension-a-taut string ready to snap. As the meal ended, Tobias rose abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low and urgent, "a word, if you please." His eyes darted to the others, who pretended disinterest, but leaned closer. Poirot inclined his head, following Tobias to the conservatory, a glass-walled haven of ferns and fading orchids. The air was humid, thick with the scent of earth and decay. Tobias paced, his hands wringing. "I saw something last night, after the sapphire, reappeared. In the clock tower, a figure, cloaked, tampering with the gears. I didn't dare approach. His voice cracked, and he clutched his sketchbook like a shield. I thought you should. No. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind flashing to the coded message. The clock tower, Monsieur Finch. Precisement described this figure. Tall, shrouded in black. They moved like they knew the manor's secrets. Tobias hesitated, then added, there was a sound, metal on metal, like a tool against the gears. Poirot nodded, his grey cells alight. You did well to tell me, monsieur. Return to the others, and speak of this to no one. As Tobias left, Poirot made for the clock tower, a narrow stone spire at the manor's north end. The spiral staircase creaked under his polished shoes, and the air grew colder as he ascended. At the top, the massive clock face loomed, its hands frozen at 3:17. The gears, exposed behind a rusted panel, were jammed with a thin steel rod, its surface slick with a viscous oil, not machine oil, but something herbal, with a faint, bitter tang. Poirot pocketed a sample, his mind cataloguing the clue. The sabotage was deliberate, but why halt time in a house already steeped in secrets? He descended to find the manor abuzz. A sudden storm had rolled in from the moors, its thunder rattling the windows and trapping the guests indoors. The drawing room, where they gathered, was a pressure cooker of suspicion. Clara, her composure fraying, snapped at Rook. You're awfully calm, Doctor. Know something we don't. Rook adjusted his spectacles, his smile thin. Only that. This manor has seen worse, storms human and otherwise. The Harrows have a curse, you know. Betrayal runs in their blood. Lady Harrow stiffened, her teacup trembling. Enough, Alistair. This is no time for your tales. Poirot, standing by the hearth, raised a hand. Nan, Madame, let him speak. A curse, Monsieur Rook. Elaborate, si vous plot. Rook leaned back, his voice dropping to a storyteller's cadence. In 1642, a Harrow betrayed his kin for a king's favour, hiding a relic in this manor. The Star of Harrow was its guardian, but betrayal invites retribution. The Sapphire's thefts 1723, 1811 now follow a pattern. Someone seeks what lies beneath. Clara scoffed, but her eyes betrayed curiosity. Tobias, pale, sketched furiously, his pencil scratching like a trapped mouse. Poirot's gaze lingered on the artist, recalling his confession. Was it truth, or a ploy to divert suspicion? The storm worsened, rain lashing the windows as the afternoon waned. Poirot excused himself, slipping into the library to study the coded message. Its angular script resisted his efforts, but a pattern emerged, letters grouped in threes, suggesting a trinary cipher. He was close, but time pressed. As he worked, a faint creak drew his attention to the ceiling. The chandelier above, a massive confection of crystal and brass, swayed slightly, though no draught stirred the room. Poirot's pulse quickened. He climbed a chair, inspecting the fixture, and found its chain deliberately weakened, a single link filed nearly through. A fall would have been catastrophic, crushing anyone below. With Grimsby's help, Poirot secured the chandelier, his mind racing. The clock tower sabotage, the chandelier's tampering, both were acts of malice, linked to the Sapphire's theft and the coded message. He summoned the guests, his voice calm but commanding. Madame, it's yours. A danger has been averted. This chandelier was meant to fall, but Poirot does not permit such chaos. Gasps followed, and Clara's hand flew to her throat. Who would do this? We're trapped here. Tobias's pencil snapped, his eyes wide. It's the manor. It's cursed. Nonsense, Poirot said, his tone sharp. Curses are tales for children. This is the work of a human hand, and I will find it. He turned to Rook. Your curse, monsieur, speaks of a relic. What is it? Rook hesitated, then shrugged. A myth, perhaps. A key to power, hidden by the Harrows. The sapphire points the way. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The coded message. The sabotaged clock. The chandelier all circled the sapphire, but the relic was the true prize. He retired to his room, the storm's howl a fitting backdrop. By candlelight, he cracked the cipher's first layer. The star guides the path. Not a theft, then, but a map. The clock tower was a clue, its frozen time a marker. End. Poirot leaned back. The candles flamed steady despite the storm. He had saved the guests from a deadly trap, his quick thinking securing the manor for now. The cipher's partial solution was a triumph, but the shadow moved closer, its intent clearer yet still veiled. He was one step ahead, his grey cells burning with the promise of truth. Chapter 4. The Masked Intruder. The storm raged on, its fury rattling Harrogate Manor's ancient windows as Hercule Poirot sat in his room. The deciphered fragment of the coded message, the star guides, the path etched in his mind. The sabotaged clock tower, the tampered chandelier, and the fake sapphire formed a constellation of clues, pointing not to a simple theft but to a hidden truth buried within the manor stones. The lavender scent, the indigo silk thread, and now the partial cipher suggested a mind both cunning and theatrical. Poirot's grey cells thrummed, eager to unmask the shadow behind these acts. Dinner was a strained affair, the dining halls, candlelight casting long shadows that seemed to dance with secrets. Lady Evelyn Harrow, her burgundy gown replaced by a sombre black one, presided with a weary grace, her eyes hollow from sleeplessness. Clara Vane, her cream blouse now paired with a emerald scarf, picked at her meal, her usual defiance muted. By the morning's near disaster, Tobias Finch, the artist, was a bundle of nerves, his charcoal-stained fingers twitching as he avoided eye contact. Dr. Alistair Rook, ever enigmatic, sipped his wine, his spectacles reflecting the flickering flames. Poirot, seated strategically to observe all, noted the undercurrent of Fear Manor under siege, not by the storm, but by its own inhabitants. As the desert course arrived, poached pears drizzled with hania. Piercing crash echoed from the library. The guests froze, forks suspended, as Poirot rose, his movements swift yet precise. "Remain here," he commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. He strode to the library, the storm's howl masking any footsteps that might follow. The heavy door was ajar, and inside, moonlight spilled across scattered papers and overturned books. A window hung open, its latch broken, and a single page torn from a leather-bound journal lay crumpled on the floor. Poirot retrieved it, his gloved fingers smoothing the vellum. The text, in faded ink, described a 17th-century ritual tied to the Harrow family, mentioning a guardian stone and a vault of shadows. A faint scent of lavender clung to the page, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. Another breadcrumb, deliberately placed, a shadow flitted past the window, a cloaked figure, moving swiftly across the rain-soaked lawn. Poirot gave chase, his polished shoes slipping on the wet grass as he pursued the intruder into the manor's overgrown maze. The storm's din drowned out sound, but Poirot's senses were sharp. catching the glint of a silver clasp on the figure's cloak. The maze's twists confounded him, and the figure vanished into the night, leaving only a muddy footprint near a yew hedge, its edges marked by the same indigo silk thread he'd found before. Returning to the library, Poirot found Clara waiting, her scarf askew, her eyes wide with something akin to panic. "I heard the crash," she said, her voice trembling. I thought someone was after me." She produced a folded note, its edges crumpled. "This was slipped under my door an hour ago." Poirot unfolded it, reading the angular script: "Surrender the true star, or the manor falls." The handwriting matched the coded message, confirming a single hand behind the threats. "Mademoiselle," he said, his tone gentle but firm, "why would they target you?" Clara hesitated, then confessed, "My family once owned a stake in the Harrow estate. The sapphire was contested. Someone thinks I know where it is." Her defiance returned, masking her fear. "I don't. I swear it." Poirot nodded, pocketing the note. "Fear not, mademoiselle. Poirot protects." But his mind raced. Clara's connection to the sapphire was a new thread, tying her to the manor's history and the intruder's motives. He summoned the guests to the drawing room, where the fire crackled with false warmth. "Miss Amos," he began, holding up the torn journal page, "an intruder has violated this sanctuary, seeking secrets tied to the Star of Harrow. This page speaks of a vault, a relic guarded by the sapphire. We are not dealing with a thief, but a hunter." Rook leaned forward, his voice sharp. "The vault is a legend, monsieur, a fable to scare children. Legends, Monsieur Rook, often cloak truth," Poirot countered. "And this intruder is no ghost." He produced the indigo thread, noting Rook's slight flinch. "This silk, found twice now, is no coincidence, nor is the lavender scent which follows every act." Tobias, pale, stammered, "I saw that figure too, in the clock tower." "It's the same one, isn't it?" Poirot's gaze softened. "Perhaps, Monsieur Finch, but courage, now we must outwit this shadow." He devised a plan, announcing loudly that the fake sapphire would be moved to the study for safekeeping. In truth, he placed a decoy gemma-glass bauble from the manor's chandelier in a locked box, while the fake sapphire remained in the display case under Grimsby's watch. That night, Poirot hid in the study's shadows, a velvet curtain concealing him. At midnight, the door creaked open, and a figure slipped in, cloaked, masked, but unmistakably hesitant. The intruder pried open the box, seizing the decoy gem, only to freeze as Poirot stepped forward, his voice like steel. "Bonsoir, monsieur. The game is up." The figure bolted, but Poirot, anticipating the move, had barred the secondary exit. Grimsby, alerted by a prearranged signal, blocked the hall. The intruder, cornered, dropped the decoy and raised his hands. Poirot unmasked him, revealing Tobias Finch, his face a mask of shame and fear. "Explain, monsieur," Poirot demanded, his eyes piercing. Tobias collapsed into a chair, his voice breaking. "I didn't want to. They threatened my sister. Letters, like Clara's, demanding I steal the sapphire. They knew things about my debts, my past. I had no choice." Poirot's expression softened, but his tone remained firm. "And the true star, monsieur, where is it?" "I don't know," Tobias cried. "I was to leave the decoy in the maze, but I never saw the real one." Poirot nodded, believing the artist's desperation. The blackmailer was not Tobias, but someone using him a puppeteer pulling strings from afar. He secured the library, ensuring no further intrusions, and sent Tobias to his room under Grimsby's watch. The journal page, the blackmail note, and Tobias's confession pointed to an outsider exploiting the manor's secrets. But the lavender scent and silk thread suggested a closer connection. N. Poirot stood by the library's hearth, the torn page in hand, its words vault of shadows. In his mind, he had thwarted the intruder's attempt, unmasking Tobias as a pawn, not a mastermind. The manor was safe for now, the decoy gambit a small victory, but the true star of Harrow remained hidden, and the blackmailer's shadow loomed larger. Poirot's grey cells burned, ready to unravel the next layer of this intricate puzzle. Chapter 5. The Hidden Passage. The storm had retreated, leaving Harrogate Manor cloaked in an eerie calm, the moors glistening under a pale morning sun. Hercule Poirot stood in the library. The torn journal page from the previous night's intrusion spread before him on a rosewood table. Its faded script spoke of a vault of shadows and a guardian stone, tying the star of Harrow to a deeper secret. Tobias Finch's confession that he was coerced by a blackmailer had shifted the puzzle's shape. The indigo silk thread, the lavender scent, the coded message, the star guides the path. And now the journal page formed a mosaic, each piece pointing to a truth buried within the manor's ancient walls. Poirot's moustache twitched as he resolved to uncover it. Breakfast was a subdued affair, the dining hall heavy with unspoken accusations. Lady Evelyn Harrow, in a charcoal dress that seemed to absorb the light, picked at her meal, her eyes darting. To Tobias, who sat isolated, his face ashen, Clara Vane, her emerald scarf replaced by a stark white shawl, sipped coffee with forced nonchalance, though her fingers betrayed a slight tremble. Dr. Alistair Rook, his tweed suit pristine, read a newspaper, but Poirot noted his gaze lingering on Lady Harrow's every move. The air crackled with distrust, and Poirot, seated at the table's end, observed it all, his coffee untouched. As the meal ended, Poirot requested a private word with Lady Harrow in the study. The room, lined with oak panelling and dominated by a marble fireplace, felt like a confessional. "Madame," he began, his voice measured, "the events of last night, Tabus's attempt. The blackmail note suggests a secret you have not shared. The journal speaks of a vault. What lies within?" Lady Harrow's composure faltered, her hands twisting her handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot, the vault is a family legend, tied to the star of Harrow. My ancestors, they guarded something. A relic, perhaps, of great value or danger. I thought it a myth, but these events..." She trailed off, her eyes distant. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And the star? Is it merely a gem or a key?" She hesitated, then nodded. "The sapphire may conceal a map, etched within its facets. My father spoke of it once, but I dismissed it as fancy." Poirot's grey cells sparked. A map within the gem explained the fake sapphire's placement decoy to hide the true star's significance. He excused himself, determined to explore the library further, where the journal page had been left. As he entered, a faint draught brushed his cheek, unusual in the sealed room. His eye scanned the walls, settling on the fireplace. A closer inspection revealed a hairline seam in the stonework, barely visible. Pressing it, he heard a soft click, and a panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. Poirot lit a pocket lantern, its beam cutting through the musty air. The passage was cramped, its walls damp and etched with faded, symbols, spirals, crosses, and a recurring star motif. The air carried a faint lavender scent, and Poirot's pulse quickened. At the passage's end, a small chamber opened, its floor littered with dust-covered artifacts, a rusted dagger, a cracked astrolabe, and a leather pouch containing a brittle map. The map, hand-drawn, depicted the manor's grounds with an X. Beneath the east wing, a single word was scrawled beside it. Relic. As Poirot studied the map, a shadow loomed behind him. He turned, lantern raised, to find Dr. Rook, his spectacles glinting in the dim light. "Monsieur Poirot," Rook said, his voice smooth but edged, "you found the heart of Harrogate's mystery." Poirot's grip tightened on the lantern. "And you, monsieur, have followed me. Why?" Rook stepped closer, his tone confessional. "The Star of Harrow is no mere gem. It's a cipher, a guide to a relic my studies trace to a 17th century society, the Order of the Saffron Veil. They hid something here, something that could shift fortunes. I came to document, not to steal." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet you knew of this passage and said nothing." Rook's smile was thin. "I suspected, but proof eluded me until now." Before Poirot could press further, a scuffle echoed. From the passage's entrance, a figure burst into the chamber cloaked, masked, but unmistakably familiar from the maze chase. The intruder lunged for the map, but Poirot, with surprising agility, sidestepped, tripping the figure with his cane. The mask fell, revealing a face Poirot had not expected. Edward Vane, Clara's brother, long presumed dead after a scandal involving the Harrow estate. "Edward," Poirot exclaimed, as Rook restrained the struggling man. "Explain, monsieur." Edward's eyes blazed with desperation. "The relic, it's mine, by right. The Harrows stole it from my family. I sent." The note staged the theft to force their hand. He gestured to the map. "It's under the east wing. I only wanted what was owed." Poirot's mind raced, connecting Edward's return to Clara's blackmail note and Tobias's coercion, and the true star. He demanded, "Hidden." Edward spat, "Safe, until I claimed the relic." Poirot secured the map, his voice calm but firm. "You have endangered lives, monsieur. This ends now." With Rook's help, he sealed the passage, ensuring no further access. Edward was escorted to a locked room under Grimsby's guard, pending the authorities' arrival. The map, now in Poirot's possession, confirmed the sapphire's role as a key. But the relic's nature remained elusive. The guests, summoned to the drawing room, were stunned by Edward's unmasking. Clara, pale, admitted she'd suspected his survival, but feared speaking out. Tobias, relieved, confessed to receiving threats, signed with a star symbol, matching Edward's notes. Rook, his scholarly facade intact, offered no further secrets. Though Poirot noted his lingering interest in the map.end, Poirot stood by the sealed passage, the map tucked safely in his waistcoat. Edward's capture was a triumph, the passage's discovery a step closer to the truth. The manor was secure, the immediate threat contained, but the true Star of Harrow and the relic it guarded remained out of reach. Poirot's grey cells burned, with anticipation, ready to follow the map's promise to its end. Chapter 6. The Poisoned Chalice. The morning light filtered weakly through Harrogate Manor's leaded windows, casting a pallor over the dining hall where Hercule Poirot sat, the map from the hidden passage folded in his pocket. Edward Vane's capture and the revelation of a relic beneath the east wing had shifted the mystery's weight. But the true Star of Harrow remained hidden, its etched map a key to an unknown prize. The lavender scent, the indigo silk, and the coded message, now partially deciphered as the star guides the path, pointed to a conspiracy deeper than theft. Poirot's grey cells thrummed, sensing the shadow's next move was imminent. Breakfast was a grim ritual, the clink of porcelain sharp in the tense silence. Lady Evelyn Harrow, clad in a severe navy gown, presided with a fragile dignity, her eyes shadowed by the previous night's upheaval. Clara Vane, her white shawl replaced by a sombre grey dress, sat rigid, her gaze avoiding the empty chair where her brother Edward would have sat. Tobias Finch, the artist, picked at his food, his hands steadier but his face etched with guilt for his coerced role. Dr. Alistair Rook, his tweed suit unchanged, read a letter with feigned disinterest, though Poirot noted his fingers tightening on the paper. The air was thick with suspicion, each guest a potential pawn or player in the Manor's deadly game. As the meal progressed, Lady Harrow rose to pour tea from a silver pot, her movements deliberate. She filled her own cup, then paused, her hand trembling as she lifted it to her lips. Before Poirot could intervene, she sipped, gasped, and collapsed, her cup shattering on the floor. Chaos erupted, Clara screamed, Tobias froze, and Rook leapt to his feet, shouting for Grimsby. Poirot, his reflexes honed, knelt beside her, checking her pulse. It was faint but present, her breathing shallow, her lips tinged blue. Poison, Poirot declared, his voice cutting through the panic. Grimsby, fetch water and salt quickly. The butler obeyed, and Poirot, recalling his knowledge of toxicology, induced vomiting, stabilizing Lady Harrow. He examined the spilled tea, detecting a bitter, metallic odor beneath the familiar lavender scent. Aconite, he murmured, swift and deadly, but not yet fatal. The guests, gathered around, were a tableau of shock. Clara clutched her chair, her voice shrill. Who would do this? She's the heart of this place. Tobias, trembling, whispered, It's the curse. It's real. Rook's eyes narrowed behind his spectacles. Or someone wants her silenced. She knows too much about the relic. Poirot silenced them with a raised hand. Speculation is futile. We act with precision. He secured the teapot, noting a faint residue on its spout, and sent Grimsby to lock the kitchen, ensuring no evidence was tampered with. The poison's presence, laced with lavender, linked it to the sapphire's theft, the chandeliers, sabotage, and Edward's blackmail. But the target lady Harrow suggested a motive beyond the relic. Silencing her knowledge, Poirot led the guests to the parlour, isolating them while he investigated. In the kitchen, he found the tea leaves untouched, but a small vial hidden. Behind a flour sack contained a clear liquid with the same bitter odour. The vial's stopper bore a trace of indigo silk, confirming the blackmailer's hand. He returned to the clock tower, where Tobias had seen the cloaked figure, and found a hidden compartment in the gear mechanism. Inside was a syringe, its needle, coated with dried aconite, and a note in the same angular script. The Guardian falls. The path opens. The message confirmed Poirot's suspicion. Lady Harrow was targeted to prevent her from revealing the relic's secrets. He interrogated the guests, starting with Clara, whose connection to Edward made her a suspect. I loved Evelyn like a mother, she insisted, tears brimming. I'd never harm her. Her sincerity rang true, but Poirot noted her nervous glance toward Tobias. Next was a wreck. I was forced to steal, not poison, he cried. But I saw someone in the kitchen last night, after the maze chase. I thought it was a maid. His sketchbook, when Poirot demanded it, revealed a new drawing, a hand pouring liquid into a teapot, the fingers smudged with charcoal. "I didn't know what it meant," he stammered. Rook, unruffled, offered a theory. The Order of the Saffron Veil used poisons to protect their secrets. "This feels ritualistic." His knowledge was too precise, and Poirot noted a faint lavender scent on his cuff, though he dismissed it as coincidence for now. Returning to Lady Harrow, now recovering in her chambers, Poirot pressed gently. "Madame, what do you know of the relic that makes you a target?" Her voice was weak but resolute. "My father warned me never to speak of it. The stars map leads to a chamber beneath the east wing, but its contents, they could ruin us." She clutched his hand. "Find the star, monsieur, before they do." Poirot administered a makeshift antidote, charcoal and water to counter any lingering poison, ensuring her safety. He then gathered the guests in the drawing room, his voice commanding. "Mies Amos, a poisoner walks among us, but Poirot has thwarted their intent. Lady Harrow lives, and the vial is secured. The true star remains hidden, but its path is clearer." Clara gasped, Tobias exhaled, and Rook's lips twitched, betraying a flicker of unease. Poirot held up the syringe's note. "The blackmailer seeks to silence, but they have failed. We are one step ahead." The chapter closed with Lady Harrow's survival, a victory against the Shadow's malice. Poirot had secured the evidence and protected the manor's heart, but the poisoner's identity and the true star's location remained elusive. The map in his pocket, pointing to the east wing, was the next clue, but the lavender-scented threat loomed larger. End. Poirot stood by the drawing-room's hearth, the vial and note in his possession, the storm's echo fading outside. He had saved Lady Harrow, a triumph of his quick thinking, and the manor was safe for now. But the poisoner's hand was still at play, and the relic's secret beckoned. His grey cells burned, ready to chase the truth beneath the east wing's stones. Chapter 7. The Midnight Duel. The moon hung low over Harrogate Manor, its silver light slicing through the lingering mist as Hercule Poirot paced the drawing-room, the map from the hidden passage clutched in his gloved hand. The mark beneath the east wing promised a relic, its nature still veiled. But the poisoner's attempt on Lady Evelyn Harrow's life had sharpened the stakes. The true star of Harrow, with its etched map, remained hidden, and Edward Vane's confession his claim to a family right pointed to a conspiracy rooted in the manor's past. The lavender scent, the indigo silk, and the partially deciphered code, the star guides the path, wove a tapestry of intent. And Poirot sensed the Shadow was poised for a final strike. The day had been one of uneasy calm, the guests confined to the manor by Poirot's decree to prevent further sabotage. Lady Harrow, recovering in her chambers, was under Grimsby's watchful eye. Her survival, a testament to Poirot's quick thinking. Clara Vane, her grey dress now paired with a black velvet choker, moved restlessly, her brother's betrayal a wound she masked with defiance. Tobias Finch, the artist, kept to his sketchbook, his nervous energy subdued but palpable. Dr. Alistair Rook, his tweed suit as impeccable as ever, lingered in the library, poring over texts about the Order of the Saffron Veil. Poirot, observing their every glance, knew the poisoner was among them, more near enough to strike to draw out the mastermind. Poirot devised a gambit. Over tea in the parlour, he announced loudly, "Mies Amos, the true star of Harrow's secret is no longer hidden. The map in its facets has been decoded, and tonight I shall retrieve it from its hiding place." The lie was deliberate, the map from the passage his only guide. But he watched the guests' reactions. Clara's sharp intake of breath, Tobias's dropped pencil, Rook's fleeting frown. Someone would act, and Poirot would be ready. As night fell, the manor's corridors grew silent, the storm's echoes replaced by an oppressive stillness. Poirot slipped into the gardens, where the mazes' yew hedges loomed like sentinels. He had spread a rumour via Grimsby that the sapphire was hidden in a stone urn at the maze's heart. A trap to lure the blackmailer. Concealed behind a hedge, his lantern dimmed, Poirot waited, his cane a silent ally. The moon climbed higher, its light casting jagged shadows at midnight. A figure emerged not cloaked, but in a dark coat moving with purpose. Poirot recognized. The gate, Edward Vane, escaped from his locked room. How he had broken free was a question for later, but now he approached the urn, his hands trembling as he searched its base. Poirot stepped forward, his voice a whip crack in the silence. "Monsieur Vane, your quest ends here." Edward spun, a knife glinting in his hand, its blade etched with a star motif. "Stay back, Poirot. The relic is mine, it's the key to the Order's revival. My family was betrayed, and I'll reclaim what's ours." Poirot, unflinching, raised his cane. "Betrayal, monsieur, or greed? You poisoned Lady Harrow, sent notes, staged thefts. For what? A myth." Edward lunged, but Poirot sidestepped, his agility belying his stature. The knife grazed his sleeve, and Poirot struck, his cane cracking against Edward's wrist. The blade fell, and a shout rang out. Rook, emerging from the maze's edge, tackled Edward, pinning him to the ground. "Enough, Vane," Rook growled. "This madness ends." Poirot, catching his breath, secured the knife. "Mercy, Monsieur Rook, your timing is fortuitous." He bound Edward's hands with a cord from his coat, his mind racing. Edward's escape suggested an accomplice, and Rook's sudden appearance raised questions. "Monsieur Vane," Poirot said, his voice icy, "where is the true star?" Edward's eyes burned with defiance. "Hidden where you'll never look. The relic's mine, and the final act is coming." His cryptic warning hung in the air. A challenge Poirot could not ignore. With Grimsby's help, Edward was returned to a reinforced room, this time under double lock. Poirot examined the knife, its star etching matching the blackmail note symbol. The gardens, now quiet, bore traces of the struggler-torn scrap of Edward's coat, laced with lavender scent, and a single indigo thread caught in the urn's crevices. The clues were consistent, but Edward's role as pawn or mastermind remained unclear. In the drawing-room, Poirot confronted the guests, his demeanour calm but commanding. "Mies Amos, Edward Vane sought the star tonight, but he's not alone. His escape required aid, and his words, the final act, suggest a plan unfinished." He held up the knife. "This blade, this symbol, ties him to the Order of the Saffron Veil. But who pulls his strings?" Clara, tears streaking her face, whispered, "He's my brother, but I didn't help him. I swear it." Tobias, his voice hoarse, said, "I saw him slip out after dinner. I thought he was just restless." Rook, adjusting his spectacles, remained silent, but Poirot noted his clenched jaw. "Monsieur Rook," Poirot said, "your aid was timely, but your knowledge of the Order is intimate. Speak." Rook shrugged, his tone measured. "I study history, monsieur. The Order's symbols are in every archive. I acted to stop a fool, nothing more." Poirot let the matter rest, but suspicion lingered. He secured the gardens, ensuring no further nocturnal ventures, and retired to study the map. The east wing's mark was his next target, but Edward's warning gnawed at him. The true star was still out there, its map the key to the Reliquand. The poisoner's goal.end. Poirot stood by his window, the moon's light casting his silhouette across the floor. Edward's capture was a victory, the duel a proof of his resolve, but the true star and its mastermind remained elusive. The manor was safe for now, its secrets locked tight, but the final act loomed. Poirot's grey cells burned, ready to face the shadow's last move. Chapter 8. The unravelling truth. The dawn broke over Harrogate Manor with a deceptive serenity. The moors bathed in a soft golden light that belied the darkness within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood in his room, the map from the hidden passage, and the partially deciphered code. The star guides the path spread before him on a mahogany desk. Edward Vane's capture in the midnight duel had tightened the net, but his cryptic warning of a final act and the missing true star of Harrow kept the mystery's heart elusive. The lavender scent, the indigo silk, the poisoned tea, and the sabotaged chandelier all pointed to a mastermind orchestrating chaos, and Poirot's grey cells burned with the certainty that today would unveil the truth. The manor was hushed. Its guests gathered in the drawing-room under Poirot's summons. Lady Evelyn Harrow, pale but resolute in a high-necked violet gown, sat by the hearth. Her recovery a quiet triumph. Clara Vane, her black choker, replaced by a simple silver chain, gripped her hands tightly, her brother's betrayal a visible weight. Tobias Finch, his sketchbook abandoned, sat with slumped shoulders, his role as a coerced pawn exposed. Dr. Alistair Rook, his tweed suit immaculate, leaned against a bookcase, his spectacles glinting with an unreadable intensity. The air crackled with anticipation, and Poirot, standing at the room's centre, commanded their attention with a single raised hand. "Madame, et messieurs," he began, his voice a blend of steel and silk. "The shadow that has haunted Harrogate Manor ends today. The star of Harrow, the poison, the threatsaw, are threads in a tapestry woven by a singular mind. Allow Poirot to unravel it." He held up the coded message, now fully deciphered after hours of work. The note, slipped under my door, reads in full: "The star guides the path to the vault beneath the east wing. The star of Harrow, as Madame Harrow revealed, hides a map within its facets, a guide to a relic of the Order of the Saffron Veil. This relic, a source of power, has driven every act, the theft, the sabotage, the poison." Clara's voice trembled. "But Edward, he admitted to the blackmail, the theft. It's him, isn't it?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Monsieur Vane was a tool, mademoiselle, not the craftsman. His actions, stealing the false sapphire, attacking Madame Harrower, coerced by another, one who knew the manor's secrets intimately. He produced the torn journal page from the library intrusion. This speaks of a vault of shadows, confirmed by the map found in the hidden passage. The relic lies beneath. Us, but only the true star can unlock it." Tobias, his voice hoarse, asked, "Then where's the real sapphire?" Edward swore he hid it. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Precisement, Monsieur Finch, hidden, but not by him alone." He turned to the fireplace, where a faint draught had first alerted him to the passage. The clues: lavender, indigo silk. The star symbol pointed to one among us, one who has played the scholar while pulling the strings. Rook straightened, his smile thin. "You accuse me, monsieur. I've aided you, saved you in the maze." "Indeed," Poirot said, his tone cutting, "but your aid was too timely, your knowledge too precise. The Order of the Saffron Veil, Monsieur Rook, is no mere academic interest. You sought the relic for yourself, using Edward as your pawn, exploiting his family's grudge. The lavender scent on your cuff, the indigo stain from the silk you used to frame an outsider, the poison's recipe from your own studies, these betray you." Rook's composure cracked, his hand reaching for his pocket, but Poirot was faster, his cane tapping the floor sharply. Grimsby, pre-alerted, stepped forward with 2 groundskeepers, blocking the exit. "Do not flee," Monsieur Poirot said. "The game is over." Rook's shoulders sagged, his voice bitter. "The relic. It's a key, etched with secrets of power, political, financial. I spent years tracing it, only to find the Harrows hoarding it. I used Edward, yes, and Tobias, to create chaos, to force the star's reveal. I didn't want death, only truth. And the poison," Poirot pressed. "A mistake," Rook admitted. "Meant to frighten, not kill. I misjudged the dose." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. "The true star, Monsieur Rookware, is it?" Rook hesitated, then pointed to the clock tower, "Hidden in the gear compartment, where I placed it after Edward's theft. The map within its facets will lead you to the vault." Poirot dispatched Grimsby to retrieve it, and within minutes, the true star of Harrow gleamed in his hand, its facets catching the light. Under a magnifying glass, he saw the micro-etched map aligning with the passage's map, pinpointing a chamber beneath the east wing. With the guests in tow, Poirot led them to the cellar, where a concealed trapdoor, marked with a star, opened to a stone chamber. Inside, a small iron box held a crystal key, its surface carved with cryptic runes. The relic, as Rook claimed, was a tool of influence, but Poirot declared it too dangerous to unearth further. "Let it remain buried," he said, sealing the box. Rook was handed to the authorities, summoned by Poirot's earlier telegram. Edward, his role as pawn clear, faced lesser charges, his fate softened by Clara's plea. The manor, freed from its shadow, breathed easier, and Lady Harrow, tears in her eyes, thanked Poirot. "You've saved us, monsieur." End. Poirot stood on the manor steps, the star of Harrow returned to its case, the relic's secret locked. Away, the shadow was gone, Rook's scheme unraveled, and the guests safe. As he boarded his carriage, the moors stretching before him, Poirot mused on the triumph of his grey cells. No crime, however intricate, could elude him. The case was closed, the manor at peace, and Poirot, ever the detective, was ready for the next challenge.